Hi everyone, thanks for joining. We're just going to give it one more minute to let some additional attendees join, and then we'll kick off the session. Thanks for your patience. Okay, thank you and welcome everybody to the latest in our series of third-party risk webinars. My name is Duncan Reid. I'm pleased to welcome you to best practices for third-party risk program automation. A couple of quick housekeeping notes. Today's session is being recorded and will be made available as soon as possible after the event. We'll send an email out. And we have allocated some time for some Q&A. You can submit questions at any time using the Q&A app within the Zoom toolbar. However, just to let you know as well, during the session, all attendees are placed on mute. Today, we are pleased to be joined by our valued partner, ProcessUnity, who will be providing insight into how they've developed best practices as an out-of-the-box solution to third-party risk assessment automation using common experience and successes of hundreds of customer deployments. And may I introduce Joel Brandon, Sales Director, and Christy Kuhn, Senior Solutions Consultant at ProcessUnity, who will be illustrating how next generation automation is enabling effective and efficient assessment, actions, and responses. But first, may I hand you over to Sean O'Brien, MD of DVV Solutions, to provide a little bit of background to ourselves and, more importantly, the key drivers for what's driving mature third-party risk management programs.
Thank you, Duncan, and good afternoon, everyone. I know a few of you on here, so a few of you have spoken with us before, but a quick overview of DVV. We are predominantly a third-party risk managed service and consultancy advisory partner for a number of large organisations throughout the UK, Europe, and a little bit further afield these days as well. We have a number of vendors within our portfolio, but most of our work is involved in building and maturing out people's third-party risk management programs, supplementing resources and advising on how to mature and get more efficient, greater efficiencies out of the program. So we work in a number of verticals, specialised particularly in financial and legal, but have referenceability throughout the globe in most vertical markets. Thank you, Duncan. I think most of us are fairly aware of the current state of play, particularly in the UK marketplace, an ever-increasing number of regulations in and around third party, particularly for a financial organisation in respect of the PRA and FCA, outsourcing and operational resiliency being probably front of mind. From a European perspective, GDPR and DORA are probably equally front of mind of people as well. Seeing a large growth in ESG at the moment this year, an awful lot of focus around the environmental social governance side of things, and an ever-increasing amount of ransomware that's keeping everyone awake at night. So a lot of that ransomware coming in through third parties, opportunities to drive and expand the third-party security program on the back of the latest press announcements around breaches of things like Rapid7, SolarWinds, the Hefnium breach as well, really causing a great deal of discussion around what tier a particular supplier should be, what level of validation and trust we should offer to our third parties, and equally how we should continue to try to monitor and remediate those risks within our supply chain, both from a third party, fourth party, fifth and nth parties as well. So a lot of what we do is based very much around these standards. So ProcessUnity being a primary case in point, the tool, as you'll see, is extremely flexible and customizable, and we really do view it as a strategic platform of choice for a lot of customers. And an awful lot of our work is in delivering a turnkey solution that helps you mitigate the risks around your third-party outsource programs, but also to help meet with the compliance requirements in relation to a lot of the regulations you see on the screen now. So thank you, Duncan. Next slide, please.
So hi everyone, I'm Joel Brandon and I'm Sales Director for ProcessUnity here in EMEA. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our organisation, ProcessUnity is a global leader in the automation and workflow around vendor risk management. We support many of the world's leading organisations with their third-party risk programmes. It's a pleasure to be here today to jointly host this event with our partners at DVV. I've worked with the DVV team for a couple of months now, and I think it's rare to find two organisations that work so seamlessly together. So it's great to be part of this team. I was scratching my head for a while about what I would say to kick this webinar off, and then, as luck would have it, England beat Germany in a European Championships last night. Now, that's not massively relevant to the topic today. I'm just delighted to bring it up. Particularly given the fear and uncertainty we English have been feeling in the past few days ahead of this match. But joking aside, one thing that strikes me as a genuinely good starting point for a webinar like this is how differently we all, both organisationally and individually, respond to fear and uncertainty in the ecosystem of our business, whether that's fear of keeping on top of risk or doubt in our decisions to select certain vendors, or the uncertainty of the future. And as we know, the threat landscape is growing in complexity and variety, including everything from threats associated to the pandemic, state-sponsored cyber supply chain hacks, ever-increasing levels of financial crime, climate change, you name it. And when it comes to the regulatory landscape, these concerns become justifiably amplified. Our regulators believe that being more prescriptive in their expectations help to remove this uncertainty, but more frequently they serve to reinforce it. Why? Well, that's because as they set out requirements in black and white, we quickly realize that we're far less resourced, too siloed, or lacking in technical capabilities to fulfill them. Now, many organizations react to these guidelines or these regulations, such as the EBA outsourcing guidelines or the PRA operational resilience statement, which I'm sure everyone joining today is familiar with. And if you're not, please urgently talk to us. But yes, most organizations respond by looking inwardly and asking, how can we deal with this on our own with the tools that we already have at our disposal? Unfortunately, experience tells us that that usually ends in further uncertainty and doubt, and frankly, solutions that aren't fit for purpose. So here at ProcessUnity, and in conjunction with partners like DVV, we're all about helping our customers avoid these cycles of regulatory panic. Our customers look to us as experts in the field. As Duncan pointed out, we've solved for these challenges hundreds of times before, and there genuinely aren't many providers out there that can say that. So what does that expertise bring us? Well, it gives us the benefit of industry standard best practice. Having seen what works time and time again, we're able to leverage that to produce a fully formed turnkey solution for third-party risk, including industry standard questionnaires, pre-configured processes, and easy-to-use reports and dashboards, all of which is designed to take that uncertainty away. So by leveraging the very best in hands-free automation, we can get you up and running in a fully automated third-party risk management program in a matter of weeks with negligible implementation costs. And with that, I'd like to introduce Christy Kuhn. Christy's a senior solutions consultant with ProcessUnity who has been involved in many of the hundreds of implementations we've done over the years. Christy's going to show you a demonstration of our best practices program. So I shall leave you in her capable hands. Obviously, once we're done, we'll take any questions from participants today. And of course, ask that should any of you be interested in a demonstration of how our solution could work for your organization, don't hesitate to be in touch. So with that, Christy, over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Joel. And hi, everyone. Thank you for having us today. I have one slide that I'd like to just talk about before we get into the product demonstration. And, Joel has mentioned what ProcessUnity has done from a best practices perspective. And I've been with the organization for over 6 years, and it's something that we've worked hard on over the past 6 years, is understanding what requirements customers are looking for, what solutions need to be in place to assist them in making their process more efficient, but also satisfying different regulatory requirements. And that's really where we came up with the best practice program configuration that you'll see today as I go through the technology. Now, before I get there, I thought we could talk a little bit about the solution itself and how we do support our customers in managing third-party risk and the various life cycles and use cases that might encompass. And I think this slide gives a pretty good replication of what those items are. It's not an all-encompassing list, of course, but it does depict a lot of the different processes that we can automate using the solution, specifically to third-party risk. And it really does start with what I would consider the foundational elements of a third-party risk program in terms of having a repeatable and consistent and risk-based approach to onboarding your third parties. We will walk through how a solution like ours can be used to help your teams focus your attention on the areas that matter and on the material third parties and on the ones that would bring more risk into your organization through an onboarding process. It's important to be able to have a way for you to engage with your third parties. It's very hard today to be able to get all of those artifacts back that are required from your third parties through things like email and zipped folders and files. And so having a secure vendor portal where they can interact with you, attach documents, and provide answers to questions that are very important is something that we can help support. And then, of course, when decisions are made through that onboarding process and contracts are signed, the job isn't done. There are monitoring activities that are needed, and those monitoring activities should take a risk-based approach so that if you do have, higher critical third parties, we need to be re-evaluating them on a periodic basis. So those are really what I would consider some of those foundational elements of third-party risk, which we'll be focusing a lot of our time on today inside of the technology. But also note, we understand and appreciate the fact that there are quite a few other tasks that you might be doing around third parties, whether it's when we get to be able to do this again, of course, go on site and do facility reviews, or if performance is something that's interesting to you, to be able to track how well your business thinks their vendors are performing versus taking more of a metrics-based approach to understand, are these vendors or third parties actually delivering the service that we agreed to upon contracting? And if not, do we have an opportunity to earn credits or things like that back from them? So there's a whole host of other areas of third-party risk that can be automated using our solution, which we'll be talking about today. With all of that said, though, I'm going to go ahead and go into the actual demonstration of the solution, and we'll walk through an overview of the product, and then I'll actually walk you through an onboarding example so that you can see this live in action and how this might be able to help you. And then we'll circle back and open up. We'll do some follow-up and open up for some questions as well. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen, Duncan, if that's okay. And we will go ahead and get started with the presentation, the demonstration rather. So, what we'll be talking about today, again, from a ProcessUnity perspective, is the fact that we are a software solution that can help you manage processes as it relates to third-party risk. We have partners like DVV who can apply some additional services on top of that if you're interested and need a little bit of assistance, which we'll be talking about a little bit more with Sean after the demonstration. But let's go ahead and take a look at the actual product itself, and I'll highlight some of the different use cases that we can support. But the nice thing about what you're about to see in this product is the fact that this is our standard out-of-the-box solution that has been designed with best practices that we have learned from hundreds of customer deployments. So if you would start using ProcessUnity, you don't have to build from the ground up. There's some great workflows and reports and tools that are here for you day one in using our solution. So a couple of things as I just get logged into the product. We are cloud-based, which simply means you can access us using the internet through a browser of your choosing. So we try to keep this simple for any types of users who would be accessing the solution itself. And of course, it's user access controlled, because one of the, I don't know if challenges is the right words, but I'll use challenges. One of the unique challenges of third-party risk and managing that process is that it touches so many different groups and departments. It could touch procurement, it could touch compliance or risk, it can touch the actual business users. And so it's very important to have a solution that can change based on who you are and based on what role you might play in managing third parties. So you'll see that as I go through the demonstration. To kick us off, I'm logged in with more of an administrative type role so that we can see some of the behind the scenes capabilities of the solution, but you will see me log in as different users just so that you can get an understanding of what they might experience. But let's start and just spend a couple of minutes on an overview of the product itself. Now, almost every time I talk to clients, one of their key requirements that they're looking to improve upon is reporting. It's extremely hard to get reports, good reports, that doesn't take you hours or even weeks in some cases to collect all of the data to produce the report that you're looking for. And so with that in mind, the solution, the best practice configuration, has over 50 standard reports that you would get from us day one out of the box. And these are reports that are operational in nature, where it's, most of the time you're probably getting asked for a list of your third-party inventory. Well, let's have that report right on your dashboard, where it can be organized by risk classification, because oftentimes we need to be able to communicate who are our most risky third parties. And this gives you the ability to not only see the numbers that we have within each one of those tiers, but also drill through to get to the underlying results. So the solution will have those, what I would consider operational reports, to help you answer questions that you might be getting asked often. And then there will also be additional risk reports, dashboards that will help you explain to management, to stakeholders, to the board, where you have the most risk within your third-party landscape. In addition to this, you'll also be able to get quick access to third-party profiles, right? So if we have a third party that we're working with, and in this particular case, it's a third party named Baldwin Financials, we can come into this profile to be able to realize the extent of the work that we're doing with Baldwin, because oftentimes we have contracts where there are numerous services or engagements that we're working on with them. And so I can see that we do have 3 different services where I can access where those services exist and what they actually are and what's being delivered to us. And what's really important, and again, a best practice, I would say, in managing your third parties, is that you will want to perform your risk assessments at this engagement level, because we could have contract review services, for example, being a lower risk to us as an organization than what a financial services engagement would look like. So having the opportunity to assess your vendors at the engagement level is important, but also be able to roll up the results of those assessments to be able to say, you know what, because of everything that we're doing with Baldwin, they are considered risky to us as an organization. So those profiles are here in the solution and can be accessed. Reports, as mentioned, are available to you and to users who might be leveraging the solution. And as always, best practices are fantastic, but most organizations have unique ways of understanding information, managing processes. So if there are reports that you just wouldn't, need to leverage, you do have the flexibility inside of our solution to get rid of reports that don't really provide value to you, but also build reports that are important to you that might be missing. And it's all done through the user interface through UI-based configuration. Okay. So that's just a little bit of an overview of some of those reports. You'll actually see me go into quite a few reports as we progress through the demonstration. But I'll also mention a couple, other pieces of the platform as well. And again, this is highly based on security. But we'll go into assessments in a moment, but we also have settings in the reporting that we had just discussed. This settings piece is important. We know that it's critical for us to provide a solution that is out of the box and gives clients a good head start in being able to use our product and realize value quickly. But we also appreciate the fact that each organization is unique in their own way. And it's important for you to be able to make changes to this best practice configuration that are specific to your organization, so that if there are properties that you need to add because it's reports that you're being asked of your executive team on a consistent basis, you need to be able to add those properties and be able to report against them. We know that you might have some unique workflows that are slightly different than what we would provide as an out-of-the-box solution, and you need the ability to make changes to those workflows. So we do have user interface based configuration through this settings piece that does allow you as a user to be able to make those types of changes and ensure that the solution is meeting your requirements and is operating in a way that makes your process more efficient. This last area, the assessments piece, we'll spend a couple of minutes on, because this is where, when Joel talked about ProcessUnity providing industry standard or leading content, this is where that content can be managed inside of the solution. There are various types of questionnaires that can be sent out to third parties. We have decided to partner with Shared Assessments in offering the SIG content through the SIG Lite as well as the SIG Core, and also providing some additional types of questionnaires that are tied back to different frameworks such as NIST CSF. However, it's also important for you to be able to create on the fly, because unfortunately, things like SolarWinds and the pandemic and other events are occurring, and they're occurring way more often than they have in the past. So this does give you the ability to create on the fly questionnaires where we might build a very quick, short questionnaire to be able to get information back from our vendors to quickly realize if they're using, in this case, any of SolarWinds products or SolarWinds Orion specifically. So you can, as a user, come in and build those questionnaires when you need to. And then last thing that I'll mention inside of these questionnaires is the fact that scoring is also something that comes pre-packaged with this solution, but also configurable. And the scoring piece is really important in helping you realize and understand how risky it would be to you in this case if the vendor did not have an information security policy. So this allows you to not only define what questions we would be asking the third party, but also what our scoring approach is around responses when they're coming back in, where in this case, we're taking a fairly simple approach where we're saying, hey, yes is good, they have a policy, that's what we're hoping. They're going to get some points for that particular response, versus no, they don't have it. That's going to bring risk into the organization. They won't receive any points for that particular answer. So this does allow you as an organization to be able to manage the content that's here, manage the scoring, build your own custom questionnaires, apply your own scoring method to the mix if you've got a specific way of doing this. And think of this area as your library of content, library of information, because one of our best practice approaches, of course, is taking a risk-based approach to everything that you do. And so it will be important for us to determine which one of these questionnaires, or even which sections of a questionnaire, should be sent out to a third party based on the risk, based on the service, based off of how much risk they would bring into the organization. And we'll take a look at that next, and we'll walk through that actual process. So with some of that background information in mind, let's go ahead and walk through an actual onboarding exercise. And just with the interest of time, I am going to start this piece of the demonstration around when we've selected a third party and we've had all of the necessary approvals. We understand the materiality. We've gotten all of those approvals up front. Now it's time for us to go through and onboard that vendor. So we can support all of those additional upfront approval activities that are necessary and required. But we're going to go to, hey, it's been approved. What happens next? And so I will just log in as a different user. I have a nice little cheat sheet here that will let me log in as different people in a pretty quick fashion. And I'll log in as more of a business type user. And this business user, Lisa Johnson, you'll notice when I get logged in as Lisa, her experience changes quite a bit from what you had just seen with the dashboards and the settings and the reporting area. we have different viewpoints for different types of users. And what we typically find with business users is that it should be very targeted in what they need to be able to do in ProcessUnity. They might need to search through an inventory of third parties or services, but they also might need to request a brand new third party or even a brand new engagement to an existing third party. So this gives them the ability to do that, where I can actually initiate a brand new third party request. And in doing so, I can, go through and enter in all of the information, that's required through some type of an intake process, which is what you're seeing here. So Lisa can very simply go through and, tell us a little bit about this particular third party and the engagement that she's trying to bring in. Of course, we know that business users might not necessarily look to see if we already have a contract in place just natively, so we can force them to do that and say, Lisa, make sure that we don't already work with this vendor before you submit this form, which is what this is actually doing for us. And at that point, once we realize that, no, we don't have any relationship with cybersecurity advisors, Lisa can go through and say, all right, here's what I'm trying to do. Here's the person, Matt, that I'm working with. Here's the actual engagement that I'll be having with cybersecurity advisors, as well as the description of why we're even requesting this service and the actual category of service that this would be within. And then last but not least, what are some of the questions that we need to answer that's going to really help us understand how much risk is involved and what type of due diligence is necessary. So these are questions that come, again, prepackaged with our best practice configuration that will have questions about privacy, what type of data they would have access to. Hey, how critical would this be to our overall organization? If they fail, would we fail, kind of a situation, and any other types of information about outsourcing requirements or things like that that might be important. So Lisa can go ahead and fill out that very simple form. And when she's done, there's an entire workflow that's built out where you can see the start of that workflow through this visual representation where we've submitted this, Lisa has submitted this, it's now gone to someone to review to make sure that we have everything we need prior to moving forward. And her job is done at this point. She has completed that request. And she can always come back in and check the status, and she can always receive emails that are going to tell her progression of this particular request and keep her kind of in the know about what's happening. So that's step one, right? Business submits. Step two, there might be more of a risk practitioner, a risk analyst who would be on the receiving side of that request, where Kyle Brown, who I've just logged in as, will receive an email outside of ProcessUnity, as well as an item inside of his inbox that is going to tell him that Lisa is trying to onboard the cybersecurity advisors and give him the information that she submitted, where he can review all of the answers to those questions, review who it is we're trying to bring on board, have a dialogue with her so that if she was vague in certain areas and he needs to be able to get some additional information, we can support that whole conversation that you might have with that requester. But most importantly at this point is the fact that Kyle can actually see that based on what Lisa has submitted, this would be considered medium risk to us, medium inherent risk to our organization. Now, there's some math that's working behind the scenes. Every answer to those questions that you had seen initially has a number associated to it, and that number is driving an overall inherent risk score. This solution comes prepackaged with an entire methodology around calculating inherent risk, but we also give you as a customer the ability to make modifications and incorporate any additional factors that may be missing. Now, most of the time what we see is that, based on that risk, there will be a scope. What do we need to do? How deep, how much due diligence is necessary? And in this case, the solution is telling us it's medium risk, therefore we can send a SIG light. We don't need to do a SIG core. There can be some additional levels of granularity that come into play around that scoping exercise, depending on your process, where we can go even deeper. Hey, they told us it was a cloud solution, therefore we need to have an entire section dedicated to cloud solutions inside of that questionnaire. So it can go a little bit deeper than just let's send them the SIG light versus the SIG core, but that's what we're doing in this particular case. Now, when that happens, and if I'm good to go and I'm ready to get this into the third party's hands, I can simply select execute next steps. And this is some automation that's going to happen that will hopefully take some administrative work off your shoulders, where I can execute next steps and the solution is going to do a lot of different work behind the scenes that's hard to kind of show in a demonstration. So I'll explain it. The solution will go ahead and build that SIG-Lite. It will build cybersecurity advisors as a draft third party. It will build and activate Matt Moline as a vendor contact to leverage the ProcessUnity vendor portal. And it will do all of that with a click of a button. And you don't have to build any of that yourself. So those things will happen behind the scenes. We execute those next steps. Matt Moline gets sent that SIG-Lite. He receives an email that lets him know, hey, it's time for me as a vendor to come in and answer these important questions that you've sent my way. And that's where we'll go next. We'll go ahead and take a look at when this is sent to a third party, how they are actually able to respond, answer questions, attach artifacts inside of the solution. Okay, so we just got done with Kyle, that analyst review portion. He submitted something to the vendor. I'm just going to impersonate a vendor, a third-party contact that we have here, and it's someone named Chrissy Jenkins, who is a third party for a vendor called Global Technology, GTS. And Chrissy, of course, as a third party, is going to receive an email. She will get notified outside of ProcessUnity, of course, that there is something waiting for her. And when she does get logged into that portal, front and center, she is able to see the questionnaire that you've sent her way. She can see all of the questions that you have sent to her for completion. We have a very nice summary table that's going to show her work that's required. In this case, she's actually answered everything, but she can start this on Monday and she can come back on Wednesday to complete it. She does not have to finish it in one sitting. And if she needs help with it, she can delegate, which is really nice because this happens often, especially during onboarding. Oftentimes these due diligence packets are sent to a salesperson. Well, those salespeople delegate. And if you're doing this in Word or in a manual way, they delegate through taking color codes and, highlighting different questions and assigning it to colleagues to say, hey, you're Christy, you're purple, Joel, you're blue, go ahead and, complete your assigned sections. Well, we can automate that. We can allow Chrissy to come in and say, I need some help with this. I don't know how to answer the entire questionnaire, or maybe there's just a few pieces to this that I need some help, and I want to assign security policy and organizational security to my colleague, Francisco, and I can actually delegate entire sections or even individual questions to different users inside of ProcessUnity. So a really nice feature to give your vendors, your vendor contacts the power to do that without coming to you and saying, hey, can you set up my colleague as a user? We allow them to manage that themselves through their vendor portals. In addition, if you would be using the shared assessment SIG content, as mentioned, we also have some great automation as it relates to that as well. If Chrissy has already completed a standard information gathering spreadsheet and wants to import it, she can hit import SIG, grab that spreadsheet wherever that exists, and it will map her answers into vendor portal, giving her a very good head start on being able to respond to you. And then last thing that I'll mention, of course, is that these users, Chrissy, can come into each one of those sections and answer questions. Is there an access control program that's been approved by management? Yes, let me attach the policy or the artifact that shows you that we're doing this. So every single question can have comments, answers, artifacts through attachments that are done throughout that portal experience. Okay. So when she's done, right, she's answered questions, she knows she's 100% complete with her response to you, Chrissy can go ahead and submit, and that will be your indication, again, as an analyst, that there's something for me to come in review. So you, again, get a nice email that says, Chrissy has submitted this, please come into ProcessUnity and start that analysis or review process, which is what we'll look at next. All right, so getting back into a role with a little bit more security permissions and analyst type permissions that are available, you will get that email as mentioned, but there's also going to be some great status reports that are available to you as an analyst, where at any point in time, I can come in and look to see what I have for review. So what's coming due, what's pending, what's missed the deadline, right? Obviously, this can still happen. The nice thing about the solution is there's going to be some automated reminders that are going to automatically kick off emails, friendly reminders to your third-party contacts, letting them know that there are due dates approaching, letting them know that they've missed deadlines, and can escalate once it gets past a certain point. But it also gives you a very good view into how close to completion these third parties are. So you can see that, in some cases they haven't even started and it's overdue. So we might have some problems here. But in the case of global technology services, this has been submitted. It is ready for me as an analyst to come in and review the information that's here. So I can come into a review report, which is going to be a report that allows me to review all of that information that Chrissy has sent my way. And we try to give you some initial risk analysis. The solution will actually flag the items that came back that could pose or bring in risk to your organization right away, initially. And what I usually like to do is, number one, I can see all of the questions and I can see the answers that Chrissy provided. And I can also see this response status, which is my visual indication of flags, risk flags that have been identified by the solution. I usually like to start with that. I usually like to understand what are some of those potential problems that we may have, because more than likely I'm going to have some follow-up questions for Chrissy based off of what she's responded with. So I can review each one of these. Hey, do you perform background screening and does it include criminal? And she said, no, we don't, and didn't provide any comments around why or what they're doing. So I need to figure out if that's really what's going on or if she has any additional information that she can give me. And we can do that through follow-up, where right through this report, I can say, can you confirm your response? I can ask for documentation. I can just ask for any additional follow-up or clarification that may be needed based on the answers that she's given. And then status, of course, is marked for follow-up so that I can see where there's some additional, questions that we may need to send her way. Now, for those areas where we've identified there is a problem, we've documented an issue, there's some really good information that can be reviewed directly on these responses, where as an analyst, I can see all of the questions that we ask the third party. I can see documentation that they've attached in one view. I can see all of that back and forth history, which is great because it can keep you out of email, but it's also great for justification purposes, because sometimes they might give us an answer that they're not doing something, but through our dialogue, through our conversation with them, we might get comfortable with it because of mitigating or compensating controls that they have in place. So if we're ever asked from regulators, from auditors, why we passed something, this is our ability to say, this is the reason, this is our justification for whatever, decisioning or conclusions that we came up with. So this does allow you as an analyst to go through and document, right, your opinions, your conclusions on what you came up with. In this case, an issue being what we decided to do. They had something in place for resiliency. It wasn't good enough. So we were able to actually track, hey, we have a problem with this. We have an issue with it. We can assign ownership so that we make sure that we're following up on this issue according to the dates and deadlines that we agree upon with the third party. But we can also say, here are the remediation steps that we think need to happen in order to fix the problem, as well as how important, how bad is this to us as an organization through assigning severity levels. So the review process, right, the risk analysis allows you to review the bad stuff first, give you a place to start that actual review exercise. There's some automation in allowing you to bulk create issues, so you don't have to do that on a one-off basis. So if we have really found 5 failures and we do need to create an issue for all of those, we can do that in easier ways through a single button that will do that on our behalf. And then when we think about this from a regulatory perspective or through various security requirements or standards, there can also be ways for us to understand what gaps do we have as it pertains to, in this case, NIST CSF. So the solution can actually automatically flag based on their answers some of the gaps that might be in place as it relates back to different standards, requirements, regulations, in this case, using the NIST framework. So those are just a couple of examples of how we can help kind of facilitate and automate that review process through onboarding. In addition to that, right at the end of the day, one of the things that you're probably doing is having conversations with the business person. Lisa is the one who submitted that request, and we need to communicate what we found as part of this review. And we do have a very nice templated automated report that works great for this purpose, where we want to be able to summarize the review, the work that we've done as an analyst team to Lisa, to be able to say, hey, here's the results of what we found. And we can create a very quick little, almost like an audit report that can be used as part of that conversation to say, hey, we did find 2 issues. They were medium severity. Therefore, we think that there are some improvements that can be made. And those issues were discovered around how they're managing risk assessment and treatment, as well as business resiliency. And here's what we're suggesting. Here are the issues that we've discovered, as well as our requested or even suggested remediation steps that we think we should do if we're moving forward with GTS. So some nice reports that are there out of the gate for you to leverage. Of course, at the end of that onboarding activity, there can be workflow where we can submit this and route it around to different stakeholders for review and approval. Oftentimes that's based off of ratings. If it's green, everything looks good. It might not need to go through too many levels of approval. If it's red, if it's bad, we might need to have a couple extra layers. So that can be based off of things like assessment rating. Okay, so that again was an example of just being able to onboard third parties, taking a risk-based approach, being able to assess at the engagement level where we can see that we're assessing a vendor named GTS, but it's actually being executed against an engagement that we have around identity and access management. We did find some, problems. Now, what will happen behind the scenes is those ratings will roll up and actually update residual risk of third parties. So residual risk can be automatically calculated. This best practice solution has the, again, methodology that can automatically update residual risk. The way in which that gets calculated is something that you can actually change if you have a specific or different way of doing that. But what we also find then at that point is based off of how risky this third party is, that's going to really drive our frequency for those annual reviews that may be needed in this, or for reviews rather. In this case, an annual review is required. And we did this in February of 2021. Therefore, the next time this falls on our calendar is February 2022. So if you are ever getting those questions from regulators, from examiners, from auditors around what is our process and how often do we reassess third parties, this is a great way for you to be able to answer those questions in terms of when we did it, when we have to do that again, when does that fall on our schedule. Okay, and I won't go into too many details around that, but we do have scheduling tools that are here that can automatically initiate those different activities to occur. And then you're able to view that through calendar reports and schedules, of course, as well. Okay, so that was a quick overview of the best practice configuration that we have here at ProcessUnity. Again, as I was going through this, if there are things that you would do differently or things that you would change, we are a very highly configurable solution through settings. This does allow you to make business requirements specific changes using UI-based configuration. It's all done through configuration. There's zero custom coding, which is great because we do release quite a few new features throughout the year that you can automatically take advantage of without having to be on some custom upgrade path. So there are things that can happen, and we'd be happy to talk about that with you if there's any interest in learning more. But with that said, let me go ahead and stop sharing. We're going to get back into PowerPoint. I've got a few more slides just to talk about exactly what's included with that best practice program, and then I will turn this back over to Sean at DVV. All right, so best practices, the program components that are included. Joel talked a little bit about this up front, but again, I can't reiterate enough how important it is to have a solution that doesn't require you to build from the ground up. We have a solution that some clients are realizing and seeing value within weeks, where they can really load their third parties in, set up their users, get some training, and they're performing assessments. There's an entire model that's built into the solution that comes with workflows and assessments through content, all of that scoring to produce inherent risk scores, to produce materiality ratings, to produce residual risk, to produce assessment ratings is built into this solution with the ability to make changes if needed. And then, of course, all of those great reports that you've seen with the opportunity to create any new reports that may be missing. So lots of great things that actually come native to that out-of-the-box solution. And then next slide, please, my last one here before I turn this over. What do you get when you move to a solution like this? And these are some of the things that I think I've seen with our customers when they're moving to automation, especially if you're using spreadsheets or any other manual type ways in managing this process. And the number one thing is less busy work, right? If you're doing this in a manual way, I imagine that a lot of your job is administrative in nature, which is not probably what you were hired to do in your organization. You're chasing people through email, you're trying to build reports manually, you're scoping out assessments. Just taking out some of that busy work is something that is a very native result that could come from a solution like this. And then, of course, just being able to streamline assessments, take that risk-based approach, make sure that you're assessing at the right level. You'll get reports out of this at the end of the day, which won't require you to, spend hours in producing. And then something that we didn't touch on today, but I know comes up often, is integration to other tools, whether that be content providers like a BitSite, or tools that you might have in place like ERP. And we do have the ability to perform those integrations to try to make that a more seamless process for everyone. And now if you've been looking at this and you're thinking, that looks great, Christy, I still don't have time in my day to do this, or I might need some assistance, that's where DVV can come in and help as well. And so I'll turn this back over to Sean to talk a little bit about some of the services that they can provide on top of this solution.
Thank you, Christy. A truly great demo as ever, and very much appreciated. So just to go over it in a little bit more detail, we view ProcessUnity as a strategic approach. You may well want to start as a tactical fix, just looking at the questionnaire side of things. We have a great deal of experience at building this out to include the on-site assessment side of things, the integration with continuous monitoring tools such as BitSite, Security Scorecard, from the cyber side of things, but equally Refinitiv, risk ratings, and many other integrations of other continuous monitoring tools. So we view those as the three core competencies of third-party risk: the questionnaire, the on-site or virtual on-site during lockdown, and continuous monitoring. And we view ProcessUnity very much as the hub where everything comes into and is then delivered up into an enterprise risk management program. So if you think about enterprise risk and risk appetite coming down from the board, and you're sending back up through that model the risk in terms of third-party risk program. All right, that's a good way of positioning the tool and where it fits in the larger proportion of the program. We're able to help you with assessing your overall program. We're able to build frameworks from scratch. We're able to do maturity assessments and gap analysis as to where you are. We're able to help you build out the ProcessUnity environment, either implementing it as a best practice or a complete custom build from scratch. We're able to help you manage the program. We're able to resource the program, or you can outsource the whole program. Other than risk, one thing you can't outsource, I'm afraid, to us, we will take on any and all of that, be it the management of the questionnaire, be it the on-site assessment, be it the continuous monitoring, and even down to working with your third parties to remediate. So it depends where you are in the maturity cycle, depends what you're looking to do. But what I would suggest is that we start with a conversation. And that just about covers the ProcessUnity side from us. Obviously, there's a couple of other key components that we're able to do there. We do specialize around the merger and acquisition side of things, both in terms of selection of companies you're looking to assess and procure, and those you've assessed, and then pre-integration but post-acquisition as well. And we're also able to provide a large number of certified training courses around third-party risk. So if you're looking at building out your program, you don't feel as if you've got the appropriate skills and resources, but you do want to keep it in-house, we're able to assist with the training programs there as well. So if anyone has any questions, then reach out to myself or Duncan at any time. We'd be happy to have a conversation. Duncan, over to you, sir. Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much. So yeah, we've allowed a little bit of time for some Q&A. We have had a few questions asked prior to through the registration process, and a couple have come in during the webinar itself. So I'll try and crack through these as much as possible. I think this one might be more for Christy. Does the third party have the ability to ask questions to us when they are working on the questionnaire response? I know you've looked at the delegation and the communication within a vendor, but is that also two-way with ProcessUnity?
It is, yep. So if they do have a question, there's a dialogue that can happen where the vendor can initiate the question and then the analyst or whoever else can respond with an answer. So it can be the analyst initiating or the third party initiating, but there is a dialogue both ways that can occur.
Okay, next one is, can a vendor submit their own pre-completed SIG or SIG Lite?
They can, yeah, and that's one of the features that we have through Vendor Portal is that import SIG button that we had looked at, and which is fantastic because it gives the vendor the ability to decide how they're going to respond to you, quite frankly, because oftentimes these third parties might have multiple SIGs that they have because their services being delivered out of different data centers, different locations. So they can decide what they're going to respond with, but they don't have to redo the work. They can choose a import SIG button, go grab the spreadsheet that they want to provide to you as the client and import that in which their answers will be automatically mapped into the ProcessUnity portal. And then they can review and submit and be ready to go.
Okay, great, thank you. What remediation tracking is included? Is there an audit trail?
Yes, yep. So there's an entire audit trail inside of the solution. When you have identified remediation, you know, we had noticed that where we reviewed that word report where we looked at the 2 remediation items that were there. Those remediation items have due dates. They have owners that will remind people when due dates are approaching, get status updates. In fact, many of our customers will engage the vendor on those remediation items to say, hey, this is coming due. Can you provide a status of, you know, have you fixed it? And if so, give us some evidence that supports your, you know, your answer. And then all of that is available through reports and dashboards. The notifications will automatically remind users when things are approaching, or sometimes deadlines get missed, unfortunately, so we'll know that. And then there's an audit trail when things change. You're able to see what's changed, the person, the date, the time that made the change. So all of that's stored inside of the solution.
Okay, we've been asked if we were going to cover, and I know Sean referenced this as well as yourself, ongoing monitoring.
Yes.
Now, obviously, that there's a multitude of SINs in there. We probably can't have enough time to really do a demo of what's available. If you could just give us a quick overview of the continuous monitoring integrations that are available.
I can, yep. So for continuous monitoring, ProcessUnity, the technology itself actually has pre-built connectors to various content providers to be able to ingest content into the solution and incorporate it into your process and even incorporate it into overall risk calculations if desired. We have cybersecurity partners through BitSite Security Scorecard, Risk Recon. We have financial rating partners through Dun & Bradstreet Rapid Ratings. We have identification partners through Dun & Bradstreet, where we can, you know, verify, validate that entity names are correct. There are partnerships through Refinitiv WorldCheck One to be able to pull in watch list, negative news type information. We have a newer partnership with EcoVadis around sustainability, corporate social responsibility. So quite a few content providers where that data can feed in. And if there's something missing that you leverage today, we also have an open API that would allow you to pull content in from different sources as well.
Okay, great. I'm going to try. If I read out what's in the Q&A box, then we can try and work back an answer to this. So my main interest is assessment of 1, the vendor, i.e. the risk of the company itself. 2, the solution, the risk of the software solution being provided to us. And 3, the data in the solution, whether that's GDPR, PII, SCD. Will the product cover all these in a joined up manner?
It can, yep. So we have the concept of assess one, supply many type situation, but also look at this from different risk lenses where we can understand the risk of the engagement, the service. I think the software was the example that was provided. We can understand the risk of privacy, the data that software, you know, would hold. And those could be different risk ratings for various reasons. And those risk ratings can consolidate and roll up to a risk rating of the engagement, which could influence what the risk of the vendor is to the overall organization. So you do have the ability to break it out into different risk classifications and ratings inside the technology. And then Sean, don't know if you have anything to add from your side there, but we see that often with our customers and being able to have kind of the different lens or angle but then also use that and incorporate that into an overall risk rating.
Yeah, I would agree, Christy. I think the other important point to note there is that you may well be receiving multiple services from a single provider. So you may want to look at, not just having a particular supplier record, but then below that have a service record and assess the service, because then you're asking questions pertinent to the service and looking for the risk pertinent to the service. That makes it more efficient, not only for you when you're assessing the risk, but also for the supplier as well. All right, and the solution supports that fully, and everything below it that you just asked as well.
Okay, another question: how can best practices or the tool assist with risk prioritization and the stratification of the supplier base?
I can take the risk prioritization, Sean, if you want to talk about the stratifying of third parties. Maybe I'll do the first one and you could take that second part. But the best practice solution has been designed to focus your attention according to risk. The assessment work that's scoped in is based off of risk to you, so that if there is a request from a business person that comes in that would be considered low risk to the organization, in some cases, our clients won't even perform an assessment. In others, they will, but it's very light touch. So based off of the risk, it can really drive your program in terms of not only the type of assessment that's needed, but how deep you need to go with that particular third party. That in particular is during onboarding. From a monitoring or ongoing assessment perspective, it's also leveraged so that if it is considered a riskier engagement or third party, that can determine your frequency. Do we need to review them annually, every 2 years, or just upon contract renewal? So it does take that approach to drive the assessment work that's required. And Sean, I'll see if there's what you'd like to add to that second piece as well.
Yeah, the second piece is very difficult to answer because you need a lot more context, I'm afraid. So, but in terms of how does it roll up back into the ERM program, and how do you measure that against both your organisation's own risk appetite and tolerances, and also against your peers? Certainly, the solution set supports integration with enterprise ERM solution sets. There is actually a risk module as well as an additional option for the solution, but we're not going to cover that today. Then the only way you can really compare yourselves and your risk appetite and current states against others is to use some kind of benchmarking, and there are some industry benchmarking studies out there that you can then compare, but that wouldn't be included within the program. That would be something extra you would have to put quite a bit of effort in, to be perfectly honest. So hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, and the last one we have for now is providing a ballpark price for the solution implementation and ongoing support, which some of which may well be how long is a piece of string kind of conversation, but is there anything we can give in terms of the pricing model that's there?
Yeah, I think we can. Well, yeah, I think that's the phrase that I generally would use in relation to this. It is how long's a piece of string. So we can tell you what the variables are. So it's the number of instances, the number of vendors you want to do, the level of customization or integrations or connectors you want, whether or not you want it, what level of services you want to do, whether you want us to enable you to build and customize and run this platform yourself going forward, or whether you want us to put some managed service wrappers around it. So the answer really is reach out to me and we can sit down and have a very real straightforward conversation about that. All right, but it's almost impossible to be able to do that over here with little information like that.
Okay. No other questions, I think. And with just a couple of minutes left, Sean, we've got a couple of quick slides just to wrap things up and pull this together.
Yeah, so as I alluded to previously, we really do view the ProcessUnity platform as a strategic product of choice, even though it doesn't necessarily have to, be to meet all the criteria up front. It is very easy to customize and very easy to drive, and we firmly believe that because we base all of our managed services around questionnaire and continuous monitoring and on-site assessment on the ProcessUnity platform there. So it is our preferred platform of choice for a managed service. So we genuinely believe what we're saying. All right. It's very easy to take the best practices program and then start to customize and develop from there. But you get some very quick wins in a very short time scale. So you get a really good ROI by starting with the best practices program and not having to reinvent the wheel. And so we would advocate that's a really great place to start. All right, build your program, develop it very quickly, and then really get a head start on where you need to go and how you need to get there. And you're going to see some significant performance increase, significant resource performance increases, reduced resource availability. Is a great issue for everybody. As Christy alluded to earlier, undertaking these processes manually is incredibly admin overhead orientated. So you're having risk analysts undertake admin tasks, which I would suggest is a poor use of those resources. What risk analysts like to do is look and assess risks, and that's what this tool really allows you to do. So if you'd like to talk about the program, you'd like to talk about your program, how to enhance it, how to drive it forward, we're more happy to do that. And there are a number of tools and guides and things available, which we'll send links to, all right, after this event. So thanks everybody for your time. And if you need to reach out to us, then please see the contact details on the screen at the moment. And thanks very much.
Thank you, everybody. And we'll close the call down now. Thanks.